Well, with a trip to Georgia Off-Road Adventures, formerly Durhamtown in Union Point, Georgia, just shortly ahead of us in the future, time to do a little bit of work on the girl's bike. So last time we took it riding, she was having some issues with it, stalling a little bit. The clutch was grabbing way out. So it's time to do a clutch on this thing, do some carburetor work. Also, my buddy Jeff was trying to teach his wife how to ride a motorcycle slash dirt bike for the first time. And great friend that I am, I give him a bike that's stalling and the clutch is acting up, and so we had to turn the idle way up. But she did great. She's excited to do that. So we're actually looking for another TTR125. Today on this episode, we're going to go ahead and take the carb off, rebuild that, and I'm also going to show you how to replace your clutch. Stay tuned. So this particular model is a 2003 Yamaha TTR125LE. The fender says L on it, but trust me, it's an LE. If you're looking at this bike from a distance and you want to tell which model it is, because they did make a few different versions, if you look at the front wheel and you have the disc brake, that is the L model. Now they make an E model with the L model. They make just an E, just an L. Now if your front wheel is just a drum brake, then you have the base model, but they do make that in an E as well. So to tell that you've got an E, a couple of things that will give it away: you'll have a battery box, you'll have an electric starter, and up on the handlebar you'll have a start button. Now the first year for the TTR 125, I believe, was 2001 or 2002, and they were all the same looking up until 2007. 2008, they still look the same, but they changed the design of the gas tank. The gas tank will be a black tank, and the shrouds it actually looks a little bit cooler, so if you want to look one of those up. So at a distance, taking a quick glance, you can sort of tell what model you're looking at. Obviously the LE is going to be the higher end of all the models. All right, so today I'm going to start on the clutch first. The first thing you want to do is drain your engine oil. The drain for this is on the left hand side of the bike towards the bottom of the engine case, and I believe that's a 17 millimeter bolt that comes out. Drain all your engine oil out. You can do that right on the kickstand. That helps to drain most of it out. And when we get this case off, we may have a little bit that leaks out, but most of it we got out. So the ingredients for taking this off is a 3/8 ratchet. You'll need a 19 millimeter socket. Extension helps. 8 millimeter socket and a 6 millimeter hex. I like to use an impact driver. Makes things easier coming apart. First thing we're going to take off is our Kickstarter. That's our 19 millimeter socket. You rotate your kicker all the way down till it hits the foot peg, and be persistent. These can sometimes be tight. That one wasn't too bad. Of course, if you have an impact gun, that makes it easy as well. Take that off, put that off to the side. Next to come off, we'll take our brake pedal off. Now somebody's put a light kit on this bike. It doesn't come stock with it when we purchased it, so it has a rear brake light switch, which we're going to take off, but you won't see that on yours. Now on this pivot pin on the back side, there is a clip that you have to just push on and pull out, and then you can use your 6 millimeter hex and break this free. It's a good time when you get this apart to go ahead and put some grease on it, clean it up real good, lubricate it, and your rear brakes will work like they're supposed to. Next order of business, if you have the E model, is you're going to take your starter off. That's 2 8 millimeter bolts. wiggle and she'll come right out. And I'm going to take off the bolts that hold the wire. Get this right out of my way. You have your ground. Go ahead and take that off, and that's where my switch is as well. Once that's off, you can go ahead and take the rest of your 8mm bolts off around the cover. Doesn't really matter in any particular order that you take them off. You do want to pay attention. Some of them are longer than others. When you're going to put this back together, you want to have about the width of the head of the bolt when you put it in. If it's sticking out like that, it's too long. Obviously, if the bolt is bottoming out before it catches any threads, you're in the wrong position there as well. Now at this point, we're ready to take the cover off. If it doesn't want to come off because of the gasket, you can tap it a little bit on this bracket with a dead blow hammer or something like that. There are some tabs up here. You can actually take a screwdriver and a pair of pliers, put it against the head. Just be gentle and just slightly pry out on it, but this one's ready to come right off, no problem. Now when you're working the cover off, you want to watch this kickstart shaft that you don't pull this assembly out. So if you put a little pressure on it, you just want to wiggle this and it'll slide right off. Take a look at the inside of your cover, see if there's any metal flakes. This is actually really clean. And here's our clutch. A good suggestion would be to go up on your clutch lever and disconnect the cable from up there so you have all the free play. There's no binding when we put this back together with the new clutch plates. Makes it easier. Now also, while you're in here, there's a screen in the bottom of the motor, a pair of needle nose or a pair of pliers. You can pull that out, take a look at that, make sure there's not a lot of metal shavings or dust or especially chunks, and wash this real well. Put it back together. Next, we'll take our 4 bolts off. You want to do this in a cross pattern. Don't just smoke one out, smoke the next one out. Let's take them off slowly and do it in a cross pattern so that we don't warp anything. And again, this can be done with hand tools as well. Just for the sake of speed, I like to do this. Once they're loose, you can go ahead and just take them right off. You're going to pull your clutches right out, and this is your clutch pack. No more disassembly of this is required. As you can take a look at your clutch friction discs, and honestly they don't look terrible. I don't see any burnt spots, but they are worn because this was grabbing way out. When you let the clutch out, it's grabbing way at the outer end of it. If I did adjust it, my free play was too much. So our discs definitely have some wear to them. So, but everything looks good. No scoring on the outer pressure plate or the inner pressure plate. Everything looks good. So let's get our new clutch opened up. All right, so what I'm going to go with here is this Tusk clutch kit. And I believe it was like $38 on eBay. Now, if you're extremely hard on your machines, you're probably better off going with something a little bit stronger, Vesra or even an OEM clutch kit. But my girl's pretty easy on the bike, so this will last her plenty. And it comes with the new friction discs, and it comes with new steels, and it comes with a sticker. Perfect. Now I don't have to return it. What you always want to do with your fiber discs, your friction discs, before you install them is you want to soak them in the oil that they're going to be running in for at least a half an hour. Easiest way to do this, if you have a gallon jug, you can cut the bottom off, put the oil in there, and let them sit. If that you don't have that, a plastic bag, a Ziploc bag will work just as well. Now the oil I'm going to be using is a Shell Rotella T4 15W40 heavy duty diesel engine oil. This stuff is fantastic. It's got a lot of vitamins, minerals in it. I believe Vice Grip calls it dinosaurs. It's got a lot of great anti-wear additives, zinc and other fancy stuff in it. So it works pretty good. I've been running this stuff in my 450 for years, and I just change it often, and I've never ever had an issue. The bike runs beautiful. Plus it's cheap. I think at Walmart it's $13 or $14 a gallon, which is a decent deal. So that's it. We're gonna let our clutches sit in this oil for half an hour, go grab some lunch, and when we come back we'll be ready to install it. One other thing I wanted to mention was when you took this outer clutch hub off, there's a ball bearing that has to sit inside of here. If that for some reason rolls out, you have to put that back in. If you look at these steel plates, they actually have a little tab on the top of them. Each one of them has one. Yamaha is recommending that you put them 90 degrees out every time you do one. So we'll do the first one right there. Another friction. Then we're going to go 90 degrees out from there to about here. Tab on the bottom. Tab over here on the left. Approximately 90 out. And then our last friction. Now we can go ahead and put our pressure plate back on. Now you see it's not hitting the discs, it's not on correctly. So we need to rotate this around a couple times until she seats, keys in properly. So there you go. Get these started. Now we're going to tighten these the same way we took them off, in a cross pattern, and little at a time. I've got very fine trigger control with this gun, so, and I'm also going to hold the socket, so I'll just roll it in a little bit. Next, we're going to come over to the left side of the bike before we put the cover back on, and we're going to make sure that little clutch rod on the pressure plate, the outer pressure plate, is adjusted properly. So if you look at your clutch arm, there's a little notch, okay, and then you have a notch right here. You want to push this and they should line up. So they are not. I'm actually going to tighten up that screw on the other side until this is facing this point. So it should be right about there, but we're going a little bit past it. So we're going to loosen this nut. And it's a Phillips head in the front. And we're just going to loosen this and tighten this screw in a little bit, retighten it, and then we'll recheck our match mark. Now you can see that that point is lining up better with this point on the engine. It could take a little finagling back and forth. Before you put the clutch cover back on, go ahead and hook your cable back up, and you want to see about a 1/2 inch of deflection or free play on this lever. Make sure that this adjuster, which is like a quick adjuster, has room to go back in if it needs to be, or out if it needs to be. So somewhere in the middle, yeah, if you can't quite get it, there's another adjustment back behind the front plate that needs a couple 10mm wrenches to adjust. But that's what you want to have, is a little bit of free play, and the clutch should pull nice and free. Now you can go ahead and put the cover back on. Check your case, make sure the gasket is clean all the way around. Same thing with your outer clutch cover. Put your new gasket on, then just reinstall it in the opposite of how it came apart. This screw right here can adjust the height of the brake pedal. So if you feel like the brake pedal is too low or too high, you can adjust it to your liking right here using this screw. Don't forget to refill your engine oil. Alright, let's get going on this carburetor. To remove this, we're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver and a 14mm wrench. Turn off your fuel petcock, disconnect the fuel line. Can loosen your front and rear clamps. You just rotate the carburetor out. Take out our choke. Next we'll take off our choke. You can remove this vent tube. Unscrew the top, pull your slide out. Now your carb's out. Let's take it over to the bench. While your carburetor's out, it's a good time to go ahead and clean your air box and clean and re-oil your filter. Let's go ahead and get the bowl off. So our bowl is pretty clean. It's a little bit of debris at the bottom. Now I only use non-ethanol fuel. I don't use the pump gas that has 10% ethanol in it. Reason being is ethanol is hydrophilic. I don't know how they say it, but it likes water. You know, it attracts water. So water and aluminum don't mix. You get a lot of corrosion. The shelf life on that fuel is terrible as well. If you're in humid locations, I see a lot of problems with carburetors and ethanol fuel, and this goes with not just these bikes but all your lawn equipment. A lot of issues with carburetors. Fuel injection, you can run it without much issue. I'm aware of some areas you can't get non-ethanol fuel, so you have to do what you have to do. You can try using a fuel stabilizer or ethanol treatment. They don't work all that well. So what we've got here, you got your float. This is your main jet. This in here is your pilot jet. And then this is your pilot screw or low speed adjustment. A lot of times when these bikes will not idle, what you're going to find is the passageway from back here through the carburetor, through this jet, the pilot jet, through the screw, and then in the throat of the carburetor there's actually a little tiny hole, which I can show you better when I start cleaning it. There's a blockage in there, so you're not allowing any air or fuel to get through. You're going to crank the idle way up. So I'm going to assume that that's an issue that I'm having with this one, because I have to turn the idle up real high to get it to idle. And while the bowl is clean, I do see a little bit of sediment in there. I'm not running a filter. Probably something I'm going to remedy right now. This bike runs fine under throttle, so this is our main jet here, and they don't block too often unless the carburetor has been sitting for years. You need a thin screwdriver to get the pilot out. These have like little tiny holes in them. You can try and blow through it, and we'll shoot some cleaner through it shortly. Now behind here there's going to be a spring, a washer, and an O-ring. They sometimes don't come out on their own. To get these out, I've got a small piece of metal with a little hook bent on the end of it. I can get in there, and spring's a little sticky in there. And then down inside there's a washer and an O-ring. Just got to be careful not to scratch anything up in there. But I don't know if you can see that, but there's your washer and your O-ring. I'm going to replace that O-ring because it's just destroyed. So you want to push your float pin out. Let's pull that out in the needle. And now we're in pretty good shape to clean this carburetor. Now if it's absolutely filthy, no point in cleaning it. You're going to have to replace it. This one's not bad, so we'll go ahead and clean it up. This here is my cleaner of choice. If you can find it, guys, this stuff is amazing. It's a Motorcraft product. It is a PM2. And it comes out like a foam, so it's not super watery. There are two small jets in the back. We're going to take these out. Keep track of where you take them out from. So the main ports we're going to be worried about is this main port here, which goes to your choke, and that's also going to go to here. This little tab sticking up. This one in the middle on the bottom is going to be your main jet. And then this one right here is going to be for your pilot. So these are the most important ones. When you spray through there, see you get some juice coming up there. I mean, I spray through everything for sure. And this one here in the bottom, you're going to see it coming up through the main. And this one here, it's going to come up through there. Now you want to see it coming all the way through. You may have to block this one off. Look at the garbage coming out of there. And then when you spray in here, if you look inside the... Nice. Give the whole carburetor a nice little spray down. You can see that coming out. That's tricky because you got to get it down in that little hole down in there. You can see it coming out of the choke jet. So all this is super clean. Just a little bit of dirty coming through. So same thing with your bowl. We'll get a little bit in there. Let that sit. Now our jets. We're going to blow through these. Like I said, the main jet is usually not much of an issue. This is the one that causes the most problems because the hole is super small. Now written on the jet, either on the side or on the top, it's going to say what size jet it is and a number. It might be 35, 42, whatever it might say. That's the size of the hole. So that's not flowing as well as I'd like. You can put this in this cleaner and let it sit overnight. Does a real good job. Soak it, blow it out, soak it, blow it out with compressed air until it's super clean. If any of these jets are blocked so bad that you can't get cleaner through them, just replace them. They're fairly inexpensive. All right, we're going to put her back together now that she's all clean. your spring, your washer, and then your O-ring. So you can see the difference between the O-ring that came out and the O-ring that's going in. It was very stretched. A lot of times just hold this upright, stick it up into the carburetor to keep it from falling apart before you get it together. You take a good close look at your needle. Make sure there's not a huge gouged line in it. If it is, you'll have to replace your seat and the needle assembly. I'll put our main jet. And lastly, put our bowl back on. Alright, so I set my pilot screw at about 2 turns out from stop. That'll be a good starting point. I just want to point something out. I had a buddy who needed me to rebuild the carburetor on his bike because he just got done doing it and the bike wouldn't start. So what ended up happening with that is there's actually a pin down inside of here. That has to go along this slide, this groove. If you put this backwards, what will happen is this will hang up. And that one went down far enough where he could actually tighten it, but the throttle never closed. It stayed wide open, so the bike would not start. So when you do this, you want to look down the throat of the carburetor, make sure that the groove goes down into the slide side, and you'll see it slide down inside. Now you also want to make sure that that needle will go down into that orifice. It should bottom right out, and then you're good. Now I looked at it, but make sure the gasket in here is good. If that's missing, that's going to be an air leak and cause a lean condition. It's basically just the reverse of how we took it apart. We want to make sure that's clean and that the choke is moving freely as well. This is super easy to cross thread, so you just want to be real careful when you get it started. Check your throttle, make sure you have a little bit of free play and that it snaps back freely. Also check your choke to make sure that that works properly. Got the bike all back together. I've got a temporary fuel filter in here, all out of my 1/4-inch fuel filters. Got some on order. So next steps on this are going to be, it actually sounds good. Next steps on this are going to be to let the engine come up to full operating temperature. 2 adjustments that I'm going to deal with are going to be my pilot jet, which is this little small screw with the O-ring. That's going to determine how much fuel is actually getting into the engine when it's on the idle circuit. Idle to 8th throttle, 1/8 throttle. And then also on the side of the carburetor there's an adjustment, and that is your actual idle speed, which brings the RPM of the engine up and down. So when this gets up to operating temperature, I can adjust that pilot screw to get the optimal air-fuel ratio. That's going to do it for this episode. If I helped you out at all, give me a like, throw me a thumbs up, subscription, hit that bell, let you know when the next video comes out. I absolutely appreciate every one of you guys watching, commenting, subscribing. If I left anything out you think I was quick on, sometimes I move a little fast on this stuff, hit me up in the comments. I try to answer every one of them. Thanks again for watching. Appreciate you guys.